It rarely happens, a movie experience that leaves you breathless. In my life, it happened about 5 times. Annie, the first movie I ever saw in a movie theater, back in the 1980s. Jurassic Park, Titanic, The Fellowship of the Rings, and Marvel's The Avengers. Those were movies that I saw the first time in the theater, and they gave me goosebumps long after I saw them. Whenever I was talking about them. I was kind of expecting to happen that again this year with a specific movie that comes out later this year. Well, I was right; it happened, but the name of the movie surprised me. Hello, and welcome to the Review of Champions. Today we're going to talk about Shang-Chi and The Legend of the Ten Rings. With me are, joining us from the MCU's bleeding edge, Mr. Jeff Sloboda.
Hey, everybody.
All the way from Texas, we have Mr. Taylor First.
Hey.
And even further away, the great beyond, voice only, Mr. Lord Deathman.
Hey, everyone.
Before we start, I would like to ask you all to hit that like and subscribe button and maybe join our forum on sakar.freeforums.net. We would love to see you there. You can become a member, and if you want, you can be on this podcast or review. We're open to you, so join us. And also, please make sure to check out on YouTube the channel of the MCU's Bleeding Edge. We will throw down a link in the description. We're going to talk Shang-Chi now, and we're going to talk spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, go check it out, and then come back to the video. Well, without further ado, let's dive into it. Taylor, what did you think of the movie?
I thought it was a great movie. I love it when new characters come into the MCU, and this one came in excellent fashion, just like usual in the MCU. Action was great. Story was interesting. A lot of surprises, frankly, what we'll talk about later. But overall, great first impression.
Excellent. Jeff, I'm curious what you have to say.
Well, I want to make sure. I hope I don't mispronounce his name because I still don't completely understand it. But is it Simu Liu? That played Shang-Chi was really great in the film. I thought that he was really good, and I'm assuming he's going to be on the Avengers at some point. So I think that's pretty exciting. The idea of him being on the Avengers. I had my, I don't know, I guess internal disagreements with certain aspects of the final of the film, like the final battle and the how things worked out in the end. And we'll flush those things out, I'm sure, throughout the course of the show. But overall, I'm just really positive about the fact that the movie broke the box office record for the Labor Day weekend and everything. I think that's great for the fandom. It's good for Marvel Studios. It's good for Disney. It's good for everybody. It's good for the actors and the actresses from the film. So $90 million.
It's good for movies in general.
Yes.
Especially in the period we are in.
Yes, and I think that if this kind of positive, financial gain like they've had box office wise, if Shang-Chi can do that, maybe that might end up keeping Eternals locked into the slot that Eternals is supposed to come out in, and Spider-Man 3, because I'm sure you guys have already heard about everything about them potentially holding back on releasing those films. So
okay, we'll get to your dislikes in a minute. Lord Deathman, your general thoughts about the movie.
Shang-Chi is a fantastic film. I just saw it a couple of hours ago, and I found it to be really entertaining. I think it's a higher end entry in the MCU. I think they did a great job as far as telling a story that was both grounded, but at the same time had these incredible fantasy elements to it. So I did enjoy the film a lot, and unlike you guys who probably saw this a couple of days ago and have had some time to really think about what you saw, I only saw the film just a couple of hours ago. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to give a review so much as my first impressions. I did have some problems with the film, which I'll elaborate on when we get to the part where we talk a little bit more in detail with it. But overall, this is, I think, one of my favorite MCU films in terms of origin stories?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I will just come out and say it. I was blown away by the movie. I absolutely adore it. I love it. I think it's. I think it's the best they have done so far. And I'm not counting those big spectacle event movies like Infinity War or Endgame. But if you just look at it pure from a movie standpoint, there's not much wrong with the movie. I can see some criticism that I've read online, and I can see where people are coming from. But for the most part, I absolutely love this movie, and I thought it was absolutely awesome, and I cannot wait to see it again. Basically, for me, it's my new number one in the MCU. So, and I will explain that later why I think that is. Well, let's just get it over with. Jeff, you had some gripes with this movie, and I hope there's also a lot you like about the movie as well.
Yes, of course. I definitely, there's a lot of positives, without question. And I think it's really crucial and important that Lord Deathman mentioned the fact that he just got done watching the film. I really feel like there is a big difference when your reactions when you first see these films, and then when you have a little bit of time to digest them a couple days afterwards and whatnot. I feel like it kind of changes your thoughts a little bit about the movie, and it kind of softens your tone a little bit too. But I feel like I said in the intro, with the ending, like I mentioned on Sakaar, I liked Aquafina in the movie. I did. Like, I thought overall, like, I liked her. I thought she was a good addition to the movie. And I liked the comedy relief, that she brought, like, that aspect. I thought she was pretty funny and pretty believable. But when she picked up the bow and arrow all of a sudden and just started hitting bullseyes and stuff, like, left and right, when they got to the village there or whatever, and then she's the one that, like, basically, like, shoots, like, the 300-yard on the fly shot that, like, almost like kills the dragon or whatever in the final battle scene. I just thought it was a little bit kind of like, I can't think of the right phrasing, but it was kind of too woke for me, like the direction that one instance went in, like with her character. I liked where she was at. I didn't her like evolving like that the way that she did. And then the way that they brought back Ben Kingsley to play the fake Mandarin character again, I didn't feel like that was necessary. I didn't like. I think that the whole thing with him and the animal that had no face and everything and whatnot. It just didn't do anything for me. Like, I'll be honest with you. Maybe I'm too like serious about these movies, but I did enjoy a lot of aspects of it. The hand-to-hand combat and the action and the fighting was great. When Shang-Chi fought Death Dealer. That was really, really well done and well choreographed and everything. That knife fight was really good. I think that was like really high end for the MCU as far as like hand-to-hand combat. So the movie brought it from that perspective as far as like the kung fu kind of like hidden dragon. What was that film?
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yeah, the one scene with Michelle Yeoh. Where that with Shang-Chi was really great. I really liked that. Like I said, my main complaint was just kind of like that and the way that they handled the Mandarin and the Ten Rings organization. I didn't feel like they really paid much attention to the Ten Rings in the movie and where the story ended up going with the Mandarin, like what his motivations were and everything. I felt like the decision making with that could have maybe been done differently. But overall, when we get to like rating the movie and everything and like, where I'm at with that, I do think it's a high-end MCU film. I do, just like you already said.
Okay, fair enough. Like I said before, I can see where they're coming from. I don't necessarily feel that way, but I can understand why people feel that way, especially if you know the background of people and why they say that, and that's fair. Lord Deathman?
I have the privilege of going second.
Yes.
Indeed. Well, like I said, I'm kind of fresh off of the movie, and I agree wholeheartedly with Jeff. It's one thing to go into a movie and then come out and feel this elation because you just watched something that feels extraordinary. But then over time, you may soften a little bit on it as you start to think of things. So nothing is perfect in this world. But I do want to say overall, I immensely enjoyed Shang-Chi. And I'm so far in the bag for these MCU films as an early comic book reader before the MCU was a thing, that I always have to go into these movies, and my first criteria for grading them is to say, would I have liked this if it was not an MCU film and this guy was not a part of the Marvel Universe? And the answer is a resounding yes. It's just a high quality film. The fight sequences were incredible, and the trailers really didn't do those a lot of justice at all. So when I was watching the bus sequence, it's so extended, has so much great choreography, moving around the environment, making use of the environment, that I thought, wow, this is a high quality film. And from that moment on, when you get to the bus sequence, I was all in. I was like, okay, I really do enjoy this movie and I like it. I also liked Simu Liu as Shang-Chi. I have heard that some people thought that he's a softer lead than some of the other folks in the MCU, but I actually put him pretty high up in terms of his performance. I think he did bring a good balance of sort of that heroic stoicism you need, and the sort of comedy that you would usually get out of the. I think he did a great job of balancing it and playing a straight man to Awkwafina's sort of comedian. There are lots of highlights to this film. Just incredible CGI, great action, blending of these genres in terms of the wushu martial arts films, fantasy films from America, the Jackie Chan style films that have a little bit of slapstick in the fight sequences and stuff. They blend that all perfectly. And I was a little worried that that would be like a kind of weird pastiche where you're kind of going from a different tone to a different tone before I actually saw the movie. But they blend it all and pay homage to it incredibly well. I think one of my favorite fight sequences in the film is probably the scaffolding sequences, because it used bamboo and I was like, okay, this isn't a scaffold like in America or, someplace in the West. This is much more of an Eastern take on that kind of thing. And I just thought, in the theater that I watched it, that came off so thrilling in terms of people falling and the way that it was paced out. So great film overall, but I did have a couple of complaints. Some of them are going to dovetail into Jeff's criticisms of the film. I don't think that any of these are super serious, but I kind of wanted to articulate them. And one of them really isn't a criticism. So, for years, I think the fandom has been sort of asking about the Mandarin and when is the Mandarin going to get justice? And here's the Mandarin. And Tony Leung does a fantastic job as a character that I'm going to call Wenwu. I don't really think that was the Mandarin, quote unquote. And even the movie itself kind of eschews the idea that is your Mandarin, right? So, the Mandarin is a fruit. And again, what I think a lot of the other people who favored what happened in Iron Man 3 have been trying to tell Mandarin fans is that, not such a great cultural appropriation there, right? You would have to rework that character to the point where he'd be something different, and Wenwu is that evolution. So I'm not ready to say that, we got justice for the Mandarin. I think we got someone new who can kind of fill the void of the Mandarin, but I'm not going to call that character the Mandarin. I also wanted to point out my big criticism with the film, if I have any, is the Disneyfication of Shang-Chi. And I want to get into this for a little bit, and I do apologize if I take a little bit more panel time than I should. But back in the day, right before Disney was going to buy Marvel was just coming out of a very dark period. They were about to go bankrupt just a few years before the Iron Man movies and whatnot. And, they made a big bet on saying, we need to take our IP to the big screen and show people what these characters, the technology has finally caught up. We're in a good place. And then Disney kind of says, you know what? We cover every single vertical in the entire world except for young men who are into action and violence. How do we fulfill that? And some executive, Bob Iger, says Marvel. Go buy Marvel. And I got to tell you, you don't know the flood of tears that the MCU fans sort of had when we all heard that Disney was going to buy Marvel, right? There was no end to the complaints on IMDb and other places in the internet where you could discuss this kind of stuff. And that's because we thought, you know, Disney's going to put their imprint on this and sort of make it about princesses and fantastical villages. Now, granted, I was a younger man, right? So I'm going to lay some of the blame of this kind of thinking on that previous version of myself. But the whole idea that you'd have princesses and fantastical villages and fantastical creatures and sort of go more towards the Disney side of fantasy, their kind of portrayal of it. You know, I liked The Village, How Low, and the way it was presented, but it really did feel like I was kind of in a Disney movie. Like, and the young man of many years ago was like, oh, okay. It not only has it happened, but we have accepted it, right? Like it's become a part of the DNA of Marvel. But so, well, you know, I hope I've articulated that in a way that folks can understand that at home. But really, this feels like the most Disney of the Marvel movies to come out yet is, I think, the quickest way to say that. But it's I would say it's a moderate criticism of the film. And I would hate to see like future MCU entries get too, you know, bogged down in the Disney sort of, you know, them really being heavy-handed with how they make their imprint on the film. And then, you know, the only other criticism I had is that for me, Awkwafina was a little hit or miss in the film. You know, I'm not going to go as far as Jeff, but I think, you know, Jeff and I are probably coming from the same place in which Awkwafina feels like an acquired taste. You're either there for it or you're not. And I think for me, she's growing on me, but I kind of you know, thought she was a bit hit or miss in this film. But otherwise, everyone else, Tony Leung, Simu Liu, the actor who played his sister, everyone else in there brings real A game. The fight sequences were great, compelling story, lots of emotion, lots of heart, and a third act that, even though it has all this you know, CGI wizardry, really came off as being necessary to the story and understanding it, and going so big that I was like, wow, they really are trying to get bigger and better with each of these films. And I hope that they can kind of keep up that level of escalation.
Okay. Well, I have something to say on your criticism of the Disneyfication, as you call it. Be aware that all those fantastical creatures you saw in the village of Ta Lo are taken directly from Chinese mythology. So
and I am aware of that, right? But
so it's not so much.
It's not like they pulled it out of their hat. I totally get that, but they're all made to be kind of soft, cuddly, approachable, like Baby Yoda. Let me buy this thing with no face and wings at the Disney store in Times Square, right? So they're turned into, I don't want to quite say merchandise, but these are the friendliest mystical creatures that you could run into in a village. And again, I'm making that a moderate criticism, right?
I just wanted to point out that it's not like they made this up just to sell toys. It actually have some lore in Chinese mythology and their legends. So the two lions and the dragon, that's what you see on the street when you celebrate Chinese New Year in Chinese villages or villages with a lot of Chinese people in them.
I wasn't aware that they were all out of Chinese mythology, but I was aware that some of them were.
Yeah, and also guess the chicken pig already existed. The fox with a lot of tails. Those kind of creatures, they were not made up by Marvel or Disney. I just wanted to point that out. And I will come back on Aquafina when I talk a bit later, but without further ado, let's go to Taylor. We need to dial this review up to 11. Taylor.
Yeah, I'll start by responding also to that same point with a little bit different. I think the reason why you feel the movie felt Disneyfied is because Disney specializes in fantasy stories, and this was the most fantasy-based, or the most, set in a fantasy situation of any of the Marvel movies so far. I think. I mean, you can look at it to whatever degree, but I think that's part of it. And I don't think you have to worry, because Marvel creates the tone appropriate for every movie that it produces. I mean, the one just before this was Black Widow, which was anything but princesses and
Right.
mythical
Disneyfied.
and fairies and stuff flying around. Okay, it was hardcore. So I don't think you have to worry about it. I think that this story, its world building was done very well. Now I did find, as I think Jeff mentioned, the third act, the whole fantasy element of it, I found it almost kind of jarring how different it was, how much it changed, how much the world changed when they went into that fantasy world. I should say alternate dimension, whatever, Taulo. And I can see how that might bother some people. Now, like I said, I found it a little bit jarring, but not in a negative way. But I could see how people might find that in a negative way to some degree. But it was strange because the movie started out, like you said, very, very grounded, very much like a modern Jackie Chan martial arts movie, like a Rush Hour type of movie, with the action scenes on the bus and the city fights, and of course the fight on the scaffolding. In Rush Hour 2 had a fight on bamboo scaffolding, so it was almost an homage to that scene. And then it made this turn into Jet Li fantasy, Chinese folklore situation type of movie, that type of genre. And I happen to like both of those genres. So, but to see them, combined into one movie was very interesting. But I could see how some people might find it, off-putting to some degree. It wasn't to me. I liked it. Oh, I liked the world building. I thought it was pretty fascinating. The fight scenes, it was the traditional kung fu style of fight choreography, and that's fully what I expected going in. That's not my favorite type of movie fight choreography, but it's fine, and they did it extremely well in this movie. So the action scenes were top notch, using that style. The characters, I had no problem with any of the characters, including Aquafina's character. Her personality didn't really bother me. It's the same personality that, that's kind of her style that she brings to most of her roles, at least the ones that I've seen. I've only seen a couple others besides this. And it didn't bother me, but I can see how that sort of personality can be off-putting to some people. So I can understand how people might be off-put by her personality. I didn't have a problem with the character. The Mandarin, and I'm calling him the Mandarin. First of all, that's the language they were speaking in most of the movie. So it's not just an orange or a chicken dish. I don't know why they have an issue with the word Mandarin. It's actually a Chinese ruler from ancient times were called Mandarins. So I don't know why they had to throw that comment in there, that there's somehow something wrong with the word Mandarin. And I liked all of the cultural references. Now it's kind of weird. I don't want to get in, make this political, but oftentimes, movies and creators get accused of, cultural appropriation or racist stereotypes or something, when actually what they're doing is they're using real cultural references from actual cultures that the movie is set in, or the movie is, influenced by. So I don't see that as being a problem. And in this movie, I haven't read a lot of the criticisms or anything of this movie yet, but I haven't seen any of that yet. They seem to be accepting this as being, a wonderful Asian superhero movie. And the other problem I have is some people are, acting as if this is the first Asian superhero movie. It's not. There are several right behind me, right here. He had Kung Fu Hustle poster in his room.
Right, in his room.
In the movie.
Yeah.
Okay. The Medallion, Jackie Chan played a superhero in that movie, The Medallion. Bruce Lee, Sonny Chiba, Jet Li, Donnie Yen. I could go on and on. Michelle Yeoh's been playing a superhero since the 80s. Okay, so there's nothing new about Asian superheroes. But Simu Liu did a great job playing an Asian superhero in the MCU. He's not even the first of that, you know. Agent May on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and there have been even others in there, but I digress. But Simu Liu did a great job. All the acting, I think, was a great job. The Mandarin, great job of acting. You know, Tony Leung is awesome. Michelle Yeoh is awesome. The young lady who played his sister, I think this is one of her first acting roles, if I recall. I looked her up earlier, but I don't remember. Is it her first? She's a dancer, I believe, professionally. She's a dancer. But she's she was very good. And judging by the post-credit scene, I think we're going to see more of her. And I also, following up on what Jeff said, yeah, the way they handled the 10 rings was not what I expected. But there were a lot of things I didn't expect in this movie. I did not expect that Tao Lo fantasy world. I didn't expect it to be that much of like, if you've ever seen the movie Hero, the turning around in the leaves, blowing all around them, that style of kung fu, and running, crouching tiger, hidden dragon, running through the tops of trees and stuff. They didn't actually do some of that stuff, but it had that tone, that feel, that aesthetic to it of those movies, as opposed to, there's so many different wonderful, great martial arts movies to come from. We could talk about Shaw Brothers movies all day long. I love those. By the way, tons of Chinese superheroes in Shaw Brothers movies. They run up walls and stuff. They break steel with their hands. Okay, again. But Marvel does this, and I don't know when I'll include myself, we as a fandom have got to learn. We don't know what's going to happen in these movies. We never do. We think we do. A lot of people online seems to think they know what's going to happen because they've seen 5 minutes of trailer online. And there's always surprises. There's always twists, and I love that. This movie is not what you would think you were walking into if all you had seen was the trailers. It was huge. It was epic. It was broad, wide in scope, and like I said, the world building that they did, the character development of Simu Liu, Shang-Chi, Katie, and the Mandarin. I mean, the Mandarin had an entire story arc. We saw his whole life in this movie, his beginnings, his middles, his trying to get out of the life and then got pulled back in with his wife being murdered and turning back to the dark side, and then trying to taking his army to destroy Tao Lo. I mean, that's a huge story right there. That's a whole life right there. And then we see him finally die. And then the 10 rings, the stuff they did with those 10 rings was just amazing. The CGI and the creativeness of how they use those rings as weapons and the different capabilities they have are just wide open now. They can do all kinds of things going forward. And then lastly, again, the last credit scene the mid-credit scene where he's talking to Captain Marvel and Wong and Bruce Banner, and Bruce Banner even said, "Welcome to the zoo. You're part of this. You're going to be part of our team going forward, and there's work to do." So again, I'm not worried about the MCU. I'm not worried about Disney princesses. I don't think Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is going to be princessified like in any way that we need to worry about. Just trust me on that one, Lord Deathman. We'll see. But overall, I say great movie. So much to talk about. It's such a rich movie. So many things going on, and so many things they can do. There's still stuff in America with Katie's family. Oh, I think we're going to see a romance develop between Shang-Chi and Katie going forward, and I'm fine with that as long as they don't overdo it. And Marvel has never overdone it with the romances. They've always had just enough. So I'm very positive going forward.
Yeah. I hope Jeff paid attention when Taylor said that you don't know anything about movies if you have seen only the trailers, because Eternals is coming up, and yeah, well, I will just leave it at that. Lord Deathman, you had a follow-up comment.
I did, and I just wanted to make a comment regarding Disneyfication, right? That sounds like a pejorative, but Disney's really good at what they do with regards to fantasy, and obviously they've been doing it for, what is it, going on a century now, for quite a long time. So I don't want to deride what they do with regards to fantasy and the princesses and animation and moving into live action with those types of stories. Those are big family stories that everybody can really enjoy. I just have always thought of the DNA of the Marvel brand being separate from what they do with Disney. And thus far, they've done a really great job of creating that separation, that Marvel is its own thing. It has its own style of action and adventure that's very different than what you might see if you went to see Frozen or The Princess and the Frog. And again, I'm not deriding those movies. I was just thinking that, wow, Shang-Chi really is the first Marvel movie that sort of came the closest to blending the house style of fantasy that Disney is known for. Like, you weren't going to watch the third act of Shang-Chi and mistake it for a WB film or another, studio that does fantasy. That felt, to me, very much in the Disney house style of fantasy. And they were like one princess away from me feeling like, oh, okay, I could be watching the third act of, the straight up Pixar movies that they do or whatever you have. But again, I just want to go on record saying that I don't think that either of those styles is negative. I've just always thought that they would be better off, kind of being treated as separate. So I'm not fearful that the next, bunch of Marvel movies are going to be sort of Disneyfied, but we'll see. You never know. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see indeed. I want to come back to Aquafina. Before this movie came out, my biggest fear was Aquafina because, and it also goes back a little bit to Thor Ragnarok. If there's one gripe I have with that movie, I think it's totally awesome that sometimes when there's a dramatic moment, it is ruined by a comedic moment right at that moment, which takes a little bit away from the dramatic moments. And I was a bit fearful that Awkwafina would do that in Shang-Chi, but she absolutely didn't. She was funny when she needed to be, but at the most dramatic moment, when Simu tells her, where Shang-Chi tells her that he actually did kill the guy who murdered his mom, who was responsible for the murder of his mother. That at that moment there was no comedic relief or anything. They kept it dramatic at that time. So that was an example of how well balanced it was in this movie. I do feel that her archery skills were a bit rushed. I agree with Jeff on that. However, it didn't bug me that much. I mean, they were in a fantastical other dimension, so that there was magic going on as well. So that's beginner's luck, as Taylor points out. There was one gripe for me in the mid-credit scene. Actually, they showed Bruce Banner in his human form instead of his merged Professor Hulk form. So if that's just that the machine cannot pick up his Hulk form or something, or there's something happened off screen, I don't know, but that felt weird to me, and that I hope they will explain that, because the arc of Bruce Banner / the Hulk in the MCU has been great, and now they take that away again. That makes me wonder, at least.
Not to interrupt you, Grandmaster, but I noticed that as well. And it wasn't so much that he wasn't Professor Hulk that sort of bothered me. It was how he looked as Bruce Banner. Like they did this crazy kind of Albert Einstein thing with his hair, and he looked a lot older, and I'm not trying to be ageist here or anything. Obviously, Mark Ruffalo is climbing the ladders in terms of the years, but I was like, this looks like a very different Bruce Banner than the one, we'd been seeing throughout the rest of the movies. But I guess that's understandable. And we just have to assume that, he's found a way to go back to being Bruce Banner. is the only thing I can say about him not being the Hulk.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to hair, Carol Danvers had also another different hairstyle than we have seen before in the movies. So,
Right.
but that changes every 5 minutes. So I won't get into that. Otherwise, Jeff may get a rash. Well, I really didn't have much problems with the movie at all. I liked the build up. I understood the change to the different dimension, to the different world. Um, I absolutely enjoyed the cultural references in that part. My wife, she is Malaysian, but from with a Chinese origin. So, well, she told me that a lot of the references actually are true, and they were actually quite appreciated by her. Of course, she cannot speak for every Asian person or Chinese person out there, but it wasn't offensive in any way. So it actually showed the way it is. I mean, there was nice attention to details, taking off shoes before you go into a house. The altar, actually, it was quite familiar to me whenever I visit my in-laws' house. They also have an altar with the food and the cinnamon sticks or whatever it's called. Yeah, it's they actually made a lot of work in getting those details right and honoring Chinese culture. So as far as I understand it, so that was actually quite good. So I think Taylor had some comments about that. So I just wanted to elaborate on that. Overall, the movie was awesome to me, and yeah, I don't really have much to add on why it was awesome. It was already said by you guys, so I will leave it at that. Lord Deathman, another follow-up comment.
Yes, I also wanted to say on the positive side for this movie, I always enjoy movies that have like an epic sort of legendary quality to them. I'm sort of a sucker for that. And they did that extremely well, building up the Mandarin's legend over this thousands of years and how I kind of like the idea that you never find out how he came across the rings, but that he did, and he used them to become a warlord. And that over time, he sought bigger and bigger conquests to get into this mythical village of Tao Lo. So I thought all of that was treated so exceptionally well. And again, I can't really give enough credit to Tony Leung as really the MVP of this movie. If you have to put him, I think I would put him on the same plane as Simu Liu in terms of being just strong leads for the movie. Lots of great women doing their thing, but those two actors I feel were really the highlights of the film for me. And I kind of wish, spoilers, that they did not kill the Mandarin or Wenwu or whatever you would like to call him. Thought he was a very complex and intriguing character. So I think they have to take a little bit of an L for that, bringing you your Mandarin after all these years of the buildup of how they're going to make good on it, and then, kind of taking him out in that same movie. But overall, I think this is a hugely great film. It's going to be probably somewhere in the top 5 of my origin, solo film MCU character films. But I also felt compelled to point out, the things that were not perfect for me about the film, which are very few.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the rings, because I wanted to ask you guys something. In the mid-credit scene, they break down the rings basically, and they say it's a beacon to something, or any idea what or who? Is there some comic book lore that I'm not aware of as a non-comic book reader that they could point it to, Jeff?
Well, and this ties into what I was basically wanted to say anyway, is I didn't like the fact that they removed the entire aspect from the comic books of the McLuhans. That's the alien race that the Mandarin stole the 10 rings from in the comics. They never paid any lip service to that in the film. We didn't get Fing Fang Foom. I'll be honest with you, I was kind of, as a comic book fan, a Marvel comic book fan, expecting to see some of those elements in the movie. So that could have something to do with the where things are at with the 10 rings. I thought that visually, just like I mentioned when I looked at the trailer and reacted to the trailer in the past, visually how they did the 10 rings was impressive as hell. It looked awesome. But I didn't like the fact that they took away the individual element of each ring having a power. I was looking forward to seeing that aspect of the 10 rings. I wanted to see the Mandarin wield all of those powers and everything and whatnot and have those abilities, not just have them be like a slingshot thing where, like, that all they could do was like be shot off of the hand to like hit somebody or whatever, you know what I mean? Or like charge up a fist or whatever, so I was kind of disappointed with that aspect, I guess. And again, that's one of those comic book things where we all understand that Marvel Studios has to do what it has to do to make these characters work cinematically. We all get that. We understand things can't be exactly like they are in the comics. But Death Dealer was not given very much service, not very much action in the movie. Like, he was basically kind of in and out, and then he got killed. I was kind of looking forward to seeing more of Death Dealer and his relationship with Shang-Chi, and also the arc with Fala Chen, the actress that plays Shang-Chi's sister. I felt like I didn't feel like they gave her enough attention. Maybe they could have given her a little bit more screen time or developed her character a little bit more. I felt kind of not really connected with her in the film. Like, I really understood her arc and like what was really going on with her. I guess she'll be running the 10 rings now and everything, which, and that was the other thing too, was that when she fought Shang-Chi one-on-one, that was one of the parts of the film, again, from a comic book standpoint, that I was really looking forward to. I thought that was going to be like a final battle kind of fight, where he was going to like take her on one-on-one, and they were going to fight, and she was going to be like a villain in the film. But again, some of that is based off of my own, stupidity in believing some of the leaks and the speculation that came out before the film, that there was going to be a kung fu tournament in the film, like that kind of element. They didn't have that. But that's my fault for even believing that stuff to begin with, off of like leaks and everything. But basically, long story short, Grandmaster, to actually answer your question, I don't know, but it could be what you were talking about and asking me about, could be the McLuhans with the 10 rings.
Okay, well, yeah, I don't know. I'm not a comic book reader. Lord Deathman is. Maybe he has something to add.
I do. First off, I want to say that I agree almost word for word with what Jeff just said, except for the fact that I was prepared for the idea that the rings were not going to be exactly as they were in the comic books. I just kind of knew that it was going to be too much for audiences to have to understand that there were 10 separate rings, and each ring does a completely different thing that's kind of like super science-y to understand, or somewhat science-y, pseudo-science-y to understand. But when I did see that image in the trailer of all that water sort of, flowing around them, I thought, oh, maybe we will get the rings like, they are in the comic books. But to answer your question directly, I do think that this might have something to do with the McLuhans. And I also just want to reiterate that I, am not Asian. I'm not Asian American. So I can't pretend to be an expert on Asian culture and how well this stuff was represented. I'm hoping that, Asian audiences all over the world really thought that this was like a respectful rendition of their culture. But I will say, again, names like, calling a villain the Mandarin, I guess the equivalent would be, calling a villain from Russia the Russian, right? Or the American, a villain. I don't even know what the equivalent is, because Mandarin is a dialect of Chinese. I don't know how many people speak it or what the connotations of calling someone a Mandarin is. But it's obviously something that I think, Asian people or people from China can't seem to get behind with regards to how that character has been rendered. And the same thing goes for calling a dragon Fin Fang Foom, right? Like that goes back to the idea that, you know, you could toss a metal teacup down a well and the sounds that it make would equal somebody Chinese's name, right? That's kind of the tradition of how Fin Fang Foom got his name. It was like, oh, you know, let's do something that kind of sounds Chinese, right? So I don't mind that they went with the Great Protector. It seems a bit more respectful to me. But again, I'm not going to come out as some cultural expert on the situation. I'm just saying you're not hearing those names and those things because they probably don't play as well as they could have, you know, in the 80s or the 90s or you know, whenever we were in a cold proxy war with China and Russia. Not that we aren't in one today with them. But
well,
anyway.
Let's not get into that. No, I just want to point out I'm also not an expert on Chinese or Asian culture. I asked my wife and she told me, but that's just one person's perspective. So I'm not pretending to speak for Asia or China or whoever. Taylor, you had a comment. Your microphone is off, Taylor.
Sorry, my bad. Yeah, I think just for to be exact here, I think Jeff had a minor error when he was talking earlier. He said Fala Chen played the sister. Fala Chen actually played his mother, and Menger Zhang played the sister.
Yeah, I see it. I see what you're talking about, Taylor.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure that was, you know, just for the audience, make sure that's clear. The other thing, there's a lot of other things. I mean, we could talk about this movie for a long time. As far as Ben Kingsley coming back as Trevor again, I agree with Jeff that it wasn't necessary. The movie would have been just fine if they hadn't done that. But I'm kind of glad they did, just because the guy's a great actor and the character is, you know, very amusing. And for no other reason than the fact that he said the reason he became an actor was because he saw Planet of the Apes, and he actually apparently still thinks that they were actual apes in that movie, which I thought was just hilarious. That whole line was hilarious.
Yeah, well, his acting on the battlefield, I think, was the best joke in the whole movie. But that's another story. Jeff, last comments?
Well, he's Ben Kingsley. Of course he was freaking good in the movie. Come on, Taylor. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, yeah, sure he was entertaining. I mean, what the hell? But still, though, like you said, you agree with me that it wasn't necessary. They didn't have to go in that direction. The movie was good on its own. It didn't have to. They didn't need to add that element. And you know,
absolutely, I agree. It would have been just fine if they hadn't. But let's say you're in charge of the MCU or Marvel, and Ben Kingsley says, "Yeah, I'll be in this movie." You're gonna say no?
Yeah. Well, yeah, of course. At that point, you would go ahead and you would throw him in the mix. I mean, because you're right, it's a double-edged sword. He is Ben Kingsley, so like, you know, hey, I mean, listen, I just wanted to mention that, you know, one thing that is kind of an outside thing that popped up last night that I noticed was that the reviews for Dune came out. The first reviews for Dune came out, and they're outstanding. Like, the reviewers are saying that the Dune film is like a cultural, impactful like hit, like film. Like it's a once in a lifetime kind of experience to see. So like it's very exciting to hear, because I'm ready to see somebody else compete with Marvel Studios at this point. You know, because Marvel Studios is just dominating the shit out of like the film industry. You know what I'm saying? It's nice to see somebody, I don't care if it's a different genre or whatever, making another, like a good movie that hopefully will take off.
Marvel is saving the movie industry at the moment, actually.
Well, I'm hoping we will get to review Dune as well on the podcast of Champions. I am intending to go see it next week when it comes out, so I absolutely cannot wait for it. Lord Deathman, final comments.
Yes, I just wanted to point it out that I was so there for the way they tie things to the MCU overall. Like I said, I just saw the movies myself, but I did notice that there was a reference to the blip. I also noticed that I think the guy on the bus was the same guy from Spider-Man Homecoming. Was that the dude? So what he's doing in San Francisco, I have no idea.
Yeah,
but I was there.
That was the guy in the stand that shouted to Spider-Man, do a flip.
That was him. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
So
maybe
you
it
know,
was
maybe
just the same actor.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Well, you know, he could have got a plane ticket, went to the West Coast, but I noticed extremist soldiers in there, in the Fight Club, and of course the Abomination from the Incredible Hulk. So again, these were pretty strong Easter egg, not Easter eggs. These were connections to the MCU at large, which I think just keeps you grounded that this is all happening in the same world. And I'm glad that they put those things in there. And I also have to echo, you know, I wasn't really thinking about it since I just saw it so recently, but again, Jeff is on fire. We did not get enough Death Dealer. That character, I would have where they showed the CGI horse looking at you to say see how pixel perfect we can get this for 10 minutes. They should have trimmed that, and we should have had some Death Dealer. I think that character, just the overall look and the attitude of the character, plus the martial arts prowess, necessitated that we got more of that particular character. And he's a bit of a throwaway in the comic books, but I loved what they were doing with him when I saw the trailers. I was like, I hope that this guy turns out to be the henchman that we need him to be, but he did not. But who knows? Maybe someone else can put on the Death Dealer mask for the sequel, and we can get justice for Death Dealer, right, Jeff?
Hey, I mean, honestly, Lord Deathman, you called it right there. Based off the trailers, I really thought Death Dealer was going to be an impactful character in the film. I really did. Yeah. I was waiting for that to happen. And again, that's my own expectations, which I put on myself.
Right. It's same here. So it's a soft L, but they got to take the L there because Death Dealer should have been a bigger deal.
I'm not wavering on Marvel Studios at the end of the day. Marvel Studios is Marvel Studios. I'm not going to sit here and try to act like I don't expect. I made badmouth the Eternals and whatnot based off the trailers and stuff, but I'm hoping inside, personally, that the Eternals is successful.
Turns out to be,
and people love it, and it turns out, and I'm wrong about it.
Yeah, we know you're here for it, Jeff, but I do think we're sort of honor bound to sort of talk about things that as fans, we felt should have been a little bit higher up on the scale in terms of the action. But on the other hand, I did watch the whole film, was so taken away by that third act that coming out of the theater, I wasn't even thinking about Death Dealer. It didn't really start to occur to me until you mentioned it. I'm like, we didn't get enough of that dude. And that's why you need a little bit of time to sort of sit with these things and think about them for a while. But thank you, Grandmaster, for letting me get in my final remarks.
Oh, no problem, Matt. I will give the final word to Taylor.
Jeff, while Jeff was talking, he just reminded me of something. And I may be kind of a wet blanket on some of this stuff, but once again, the internet had us all believing, or had some people believing, that a key portion of this movie, a key plot element of this movie was going to be some big martial arts tournament, which it was not. Okay? And they thought that Shang-Chi was going to fight Blonsky, whatever he's called now, Abomination. And they had all these theories about Wong and Abomination, all of which completely wrong. So I don't know why people just can't wait and see the movie.
Right.
Because that was
friends don't let friends speculate and drive.
No.
Exactly.
So we can conclude that Marvel Studios puts out trailers. You watch them, you get some very short clips of what's going on in the movie, but what's actually going on, you just don't know. So let that be a lesson to us all.
And sometimes the clips in the movies are just not even, or the clips in the trailers are not even in the movie. We all remember seeing Hulk in the battle in Infinity War when he actually was not there.
Yeah, the complete run of the Avengers in Wakanda was not in the movie. So
that was a classic. That was a classic shot in that second Infinity War trailer, Taylor, with Captain America in the Secret Avengers outfit with Black Widow and Black Panther and everything in Wakanda with Hulk. Holy shit! You ever watch trailer reaction videos on YouTube of people watching that? They're just like, what?
Yeah, well, another one is in the Spider-Man Homecoming trailer where you see Spider-Man swinging on the web and Iron Man flying right beside him. Not in the movie.
Well,
but anyway.
in this, the Mandarin did not say, "Watch how you talk to me, boy." That line was not in the movie, but it was in the trailer.
It wasn't. Yeah, good call, Taylor. That wasn't in the film.
Okay.
And Marvel puts out these, in addition to the trailers, on their YouTube channel, they put out these like 15, 20-second clips in the week, just in the last week or so leading up to the movie. I don't even watch those. I avoid those because I'm afraid that they're either spoilers or they're another trick trying to fool me.
Agreed. I also don't watch those. I watch 2 trailers and that's it. Well, this will conclude our review for Shang-Chi and The Legend of the Ten Rings. I hope you enjoyed our review as much as some of us enjoyed the movie. Before we finish, I would like to ask you again to hit that subscribe button and notification bell on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter, like our Facebook page, join the forum on Sakar, sakar.freeforums.net. That way you will never have to miss us and we won't have to miss you. Thank you and see you next time for our next movie review. That could very well be June. Bye.